May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always pleasing to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This little passage from John's Gospel that we just heard is the end of several chapters in the Gospel, several chapters of prayer. Jesus prays for himself and he prays for his disciples. And then in this passage at the very, very end, he says that wonderful, hopeful thing. He says, I pray not only for these, where these are the disciples, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. But also he prays for those who will know Jesus, who will trust in Jesus, who will have faith in Jesus and the way that Jesus reveals God to us and the way of being human that Jesus shows us. All of that they will know all of that through the words of those disciples. And all of this so that they all may be one. That they all may be one. Now, this is a beautiful and hopeful thing, and pretty much every commentary that I read about this passage starts by saying how wonderful it is to know that Jesus prayed for us. Because after all, we are the ones who know Jesus through the word of the disciples who have gone before us. But how do you know someone? How do you believe in someone? How do you believe in Jesus as the Christ, the Son of God, the one who reveals the divine truth to us, the divine nature of life to us? How do you know that through someone's word? The word, the Greek word that is translated as word here is logos, of course, and it means so much more than what comes forth from someone's mouth. It means so much more than that. I mean, if someone tells you about Jesus, you can know about Jesus, but can you really love Jesus just by hearing about him? So I want to share a story with you that illustrates in a powerful way the difference between knowing about someone, knowing about Jesus, and truly knowing, trusting in, having faith in the God that Jesus reveals to us. Having faith in Jesus as the one who reveals this new way, this wonderful way of being human to us. On April 28th, so 8 days after Easter, I flew to Bozeman and then drove to Livingston. And in Livingston, I met with 6 other men. And this is a prayer group that I have belonged to for 25 years now. This is a prayer group that started in 2000 when we were all juniors, first-year seminarians together, and we wanted to have the support of a small group of people that we could pray with, that we could share our story and our struggles with, where we could support one another. And so these 7 men gathered weekly throughout the 3 years of seminary. And at the end of seminary, we looked at one another and said, this is too good. This is too good to give up. And so we arranged to have a monthly conference call. In those days, that was the best we could do. We spoke on the phone and once a month. And then, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was we finally started using Zoom and seeing each other on the screen. So for 25 years, we've had a monthly check-in and an annual gathering. And this trip on April 28th was that annual gathering. And what we do together is we share what's going on in our lives. We share what's going on personally and spiritually in our families, in our churches. And it has been powerful, beautiful to know these 6 other men for 25 years in this way. But this year was particularly powerful. One of the men in the group is Joseph Constant. And Joseph is Haitian, and when he was 12 years old, he moved to Boston. His mom still lived in Haiti, but his father lived in Boston. He moved there, and that's where he went to high school, and he ended up getting a degree and becoming a civil engineer. And then his path led him to seminary, which is where I met him. And I think he's about 12 years younger than me. Anyway, so Joseph and I, we were in seminary together. We would run together, play soccer. Well, I mean, really, he played soccer and I ran around because he's really good at it and I'm not. But it was great fun. We were good friends and we were part of this group together. This year, Joseph shared the most amazing story. But before I tell you that story, I need to give you a little bit of background. Because in 2003, when we graduated, Joseph got a call from his mother. Now, Mama lives in Mirebalais. Mirebalais is about 40 miles outside of Port-au-Prince. And it's far enough away from Port-au-Prince that most of the chaos of Port-au-Prince hadn't made its way there. Even after the gangs took over Port-au-Prince and the airport was closed, Mirebalais was pretty much okay. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So she called and she said, Joseph, there are children going hungry, and we need to do something about it. There are children on the streets of Mirebalais who are hungry every day. And so Joseph started the Haiti Micah Project. Haiti is obvious. Micah, for Micah 6:8, that we would seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. That, for him, was the heart of this ministry for these children in Mirebalais. And so Joseph put together a board and found people around, in other churches and around in the seminary community and et cetera. And, our prayer group was a part of launching this Haiti Micah Project. And on the first day, we were all set. They were all set there in Mirebalais to feed 50 kids. They were ready to feed 50 kids, and 150 showed up. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a ministry. They fed all 150. They made a whole bunch more food, but they immediately knew that the supplies that they had purchased for this first week of the feeding program weren't going to be nearly enough. They needed at least 3 times as much. So they went out and they bought more food, and the word went out into this network of people who were supporting the Haiti Micah Project. This word-of-mouth network went out, and we raised more money, and it was just so inspiring and so tragic at the same time. Well, that was the beginning of the Haiti Micah Project, and it went on and it grew from there, and they realized that a lot of these kids are poor and just living on the street because their parents can't afford to buy the uniform that is necessary to attend school. And so we began, I keep saying we, I love taking credit for this, but I was just aware of it and contributing to it. This is Joseph's project. Joseph began a program of collecting money and buying uniforms for the children on the streets. So they bought uniforms so that those kids could go to school, and they fed 150, 200 kids every week, and the program kept growing, and they realized that some of those kids actually didn't have a home to go home to, and so they started an orphanage. The Haiti Micah Project now included an orphanage, and they took the most desperately needy of those street children, and they brought them in, and they gave them a place to live, and they gave them structure to their lives and a safe place to sleep at night. And the program grew from there, and kids went from being, little tiny elementary school kids to being middle schoolers and high schoolers, all in this program. And I remember more than a decade ago now when the first of them were sent off to college in the Dominican Republic mostly, and in the north of Haiti. There were places they could go to college. And they realized that they didn't have the ability to do something for these kids once they graduated from high school, and they wanted desperately to give them a better chance in life and in the world, even the ones who couldn't go off to college. And so they started a trade school. And the trade school was built right there in Mirebalais, right near the orphanage, and they bought a building, and they built it out to have computers and to teach computer skills and to teach, Microsoft Word and Excel and all of those kinds of things, and some basic programming skills. And there was sewing classes and practical skills, trade school skills. But the trade school was having trouble because the power supply in that part of town was unreliable. And so the next project was to build a solar electricity system so that they could constantly they could have reliable power for the trade school. And so they built a solar collection system for the trade school, and they realized, well, then another problem that they have is that there's not reliable fresh water, and of course the feeding program needs that. And so they used some of the excess power from this beautiful solar system that they built to build a water sanitation system that was big enough for the whole neighborhood. So the whole neighborhood got the benefit of fresh water, and it just went on like that. That's the story of the Haiti Micah project. At one point, Joseph had started bringing priests, people who were training to be priests in Haiti, to Virginia Theological Seminary, where we all went to school, so they could have a year or two of formal training in the priesthood there at this wonderful seminary. So he built this incredible network. But things are not so good in Haiti right now. I don't know if you've noticed this, but things are really bad in Haiti. And just over a year ago, the president of the country was murdered in his own home. He was murdered. And the people that murdered him then began spreading gang violence and taking over whole sections of Port-au-Prince. And the whole city eventually fell to gang violence. And these gangs they're not like the LA gangs, that kind of a thing. It's more of a violent militia kind of a thing, right? And so there are families, well-to-do, powerful families in Haiti that are using gang violence to maintain their influence and control in the country. And they have given weapons to young people and sent them out to take over parts of the city. And for the first year, it was pretty much contained to Port-au-Prince, and the airport there closed. The only airport you can get to is in the north of Haiti. Well, on March 30th, the Sunday of March 30th, word came that the gangs were coming to Mirebalais. And the first thing they did was they took the 16 kids that were living in the orphanage, and they took them out of Mirebalais up to Henchi, which is the city north of Mirebalais, about 35 miles north. And Joseph's mother stayed there in town. And on that Sunday night, the gangs came in and began destroying and killing people. They killed 2 nuns in a house 2 doors down from Joseph's mother's house. This Catholic nunnery was there, and it was a place of great importance in the town, and they killed the nuns there. And so Joseph's mother called him and said, "They are here, the gangs are here." And she closed the doors of her house and stayed inside with a young man that she had taken in off the streets, another one of these young people that she was helping out, and he was helping her. Now, Mama is 83 years old, and at first, nobody came into their house, but on Wednesday, about 4 days later, they broke in the front door of Mama's house, and they knocked her to the ground in the courtyard, and they held a gun to the young man's head, and they took all of her possessions. And then, in the midst of all of this, as she was fearing for her life, one of them said to her, "Mama, we're not here to kill you." And then they left. Well, from the beginning of this episode, Joseph had been on the phone, and Joseph knows some people. He knows the mayor of Port-au-Prince. He knows people in the government. He knows priests across the country, and he had been making phone calls and praying for the safety of his mother. But at this point, things had fallen apart, and he was just trying to figure out how to get her to safety. And so she left. She left her home in the middle of the night on Wednesday night, and she and the young man went into the forest and were making their way on foot to Henchi, 35 miles north of there. But she's 83 years old, and she's bruised and sore from being knocked down by the people that broke into her house, and they weren't going to make it. It was just too hard, and the young man was trying to help her and carry her bags, and it was just so hard, and they're walking through the night. They're walking through the night, and another man comes towards them in the darkness, and she was afraid. What will this be? Is this the end of our escape? And the young man, he walked up, and when he got close to them, he stopped, and he said, "Mama, it's me. You fed me. I will help you." And he helped her, and he carried her bags, and he helped her get from there to the nearest road. And they started walking on the road, Mama and these two young men, and a motorcycle came by, and the motorcycle pulled over. Still, it's the dead of night. The motorcycle pulls over and stops. They don't know who it is. And the motorcyclist had a helmet on and a visor and all of that. And he puts up his visor, and he looks at her, and he says, "Mama, it's me." And it was another young person that she had fed, that the Haiti Micah Project had fed, and he put her, this had to have been a scene, he put this 83-year-old woman on the back of his motorcycle and took her the rest of the way to Henchi. And when they got to Henchi, he took her to a home, an apartment, where two of the young people that had come up through the Haiti Micah program had been educated through the Haiti Micah Project and fed by it. They had an apartment there. They were there working in Henchi, and they put her up. And so she was safe, and she called Joseph, and she said, "I'm here." And the priest from Henchi called Joseph and said, "Your mother, she made it here, and she is fine." And all of this had just happened when we gathered in Montana for this prayer retreat. And Joseph shared this story for us, and he had not yet been able to see his mother. He hadn't yet been able to connect directly with her. He knew that she was there. Well, the prayer meeting, our prayer retreat, ended on Friday, and on Sunday, Joseph flew to Miami, and then from Miami to the north of Haiti. And in the north of Haiti, two priests, two more people that he had sponsored and helped, brought him from the airport, the 30 or 40 miles south to Henchi, where he was reunited with his mother. And Joseph brought his mother back to the airport and back to Haiti, and she's safe there. So those four young people, the one in the forest and the one on the motorcycle and the two in the apartment, all of whom had been fed by the Haiti Micah Project, brought Mama to safety. How will we know Jesus through the words of the disciples? We will know Jesus through acts like that. Mama called Joseph and said, "There are children here who are hungry." And before this destruction of the program on March 30th, they were feeding 600 children a day. 600 children a day being fed by the Haiti Micah Project. And all 16 of those kids made it to Henchi, and at first they were actually in that same apartment where they took Mama. And the landlord said, "I understand your problem, but I cannot have 18 people living in this two-person apartment." And so they're looking for, they found a place to take the children. That they all may be one, Jesus says. That they all may be one. I pray not only for these, but for those who will know me, who will believe in me through their word. Their word, their actions. Word is so much more than the words that come out of our mouths. It is our whole being. It is our whole presence in the world. And Mama looked at those urchins, those dirty little kids on the street, and she saw the image of Christ in them. And she called Joseph and she said, "We have to feed them." and they fed them, and they gave them school uniforms, and they housed them, and they sent them off to college. There's a wonderful picture on the Haiti Micah website right now of several of the kids, one of whom's in a nursing program in the Dominican Republic, learning to be a nurse, and another who's learning to be an electrical engineer. You know, these are the kids that were on the street. How will we know Jesus through the words of the disciples? Well, another useful question, and I'll end with this, is how will the world know Jesus through our word? How will Jesus be known through who we are as a community of faith? How will the world know the divine truth of God's love for all of humanity through our presence, through our words, through our actions, through our love? We continue with the Nicene Creed found on page 5 of our bulletin. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. We believe